So I finished my residency for geriatrics in 2016, I believe. And I took my boards shortly after that because you have to take that in order to actually be certified. And yay! I passed on the first time. And I was extremely grateful to have gone through the program, to have met some amazing therapists, had wonderful mentors that prepared me for what was next as a GCS or board certified geriatric clinical specialist. Now, when I returned from my residency and began working, I honestly did not have the opportunity to go into a facility or into a program that specifically allowed me to work with patients who were geriatric. But in just learning everything that I had in the residency, I really pushed to try to use the information and the skills that I learned to really focus in on my older adults when I had the opportunity to work with them. So when I returned from my residency, I ended up going into work in an inpatient rehab facility. And then shortly after that, I began working in long-term acute care, which became the area I stayed in for about 6 or so years. During this time, there were a lot of questions. What does a GCS do? And, during my residency, I learned about all the different things that we could participate in, screenings, educating families, working in wellness centers, working with the community. And when I came back, I didn't necessarily have that framework yet. And all I knew to do was when I did get those individuals who were older and, working with their families, I was going to try to educate them the best that I could and just be an advocate for them because of everything I learned in my residency. Of basically, older individuals are capable of so much more than our society gives them credit for. And we have to be advocates, and we are resources as a physical therapist, especially as a GCS, to empower them to realize their potential. So just to, I guess, kind of summarize it, I wasn't necessarily working in an environment where the skills that I had learned could really flourish. And that was okay. I was doing good for those that I was seeing. I was trying to make a point of educating and, informing my colleagues of what I've learned, what's important, how to be more proficient and competent in working with our older individuals with their different conditions. Fast forward to 2022. That year threw me for a loop. I was working in acute care. I had transitioned from long-term acute care, decided to go to acute care just for even more experience, working with a different population. And of course, unfortunately, older individuals are in hospitals, and in the system that was set up, I had the opportunity to be able to choose my caseload. So I often worked with older individuals, with their families, caregivers, and it really was an excellent opportunity to really put into practice everything that I learned, but in this specific area of acute care. Unfortunately, during the end of my year in acute care, both of my grandfathers became ill. One had been ill for quite a while, had a lot of chronic conditions, and another was actually very healthy, aside from the point that he had stage 4 lung cancer. Within a week of each other, my grandpa's passed away. This was important in my life, not just because I had lost my grandpa's, but because my grandpa was taking care of my grandmother on my dad's side. And my grandmother had a stroke in 2018. And so he'd been caring for her for about 3 years. Main caregiver, doing everything for her. She was on hospice. And in a blink of an eye, he wasn't here anymore to take care of her. As a PT, this was heartbreaking in the fact that, of course, during her recovery, she wasn't able to fully recover. So my grandpa did have to take care of her. But also, our family is relatively young. So there was really no one that didn't work or that was available 24/7 to be able to take my grandmother in immediately. We thought that we found a fairly decent place just to kind of hold her over in the meantime, because I knew at some point I would want to take over her care, but I'd been married not too long. We just bought a house. Life was going and kind of at a feverish pace, and I just didn't have the time and really the resources, or so I thought. Unfortunately, my grandmother, while in a skilled nursing facility, not to talk down on nursing facilities because we need them, there is a need for them, and there are great people that work in skilled nursing facilities or nursing homes. However, our experience was not the best, and my grandmother, who had a stroke and was not very mobile, somehow ended up with a broken arm. I got that call on a Friday night. Friday night, after the call, I sent an email to my boss letting her know that I would have to be resigning from my job. Although the long-term plan was for me to care for my grandmother, I wasn't expecting to do it right then. But the granddaughter in me, with my faith, the God in me, and with my background, specifically in geriatrics within me, told me that this is something you have to do. You probably know better than anyone how to care for someone in this condition and what it means to be able to care for someone in this condition. So I resigned from my job. My boss was very gracious. I'm sure it was a surprise to her. It was a surprise to me. It was a surprise to our staff. But ultimately, it had to be done. And so on September 13th or so, 2022, my grandmother moved in with my husband and I and our dog full time. And within a day or so, I became a full-time caregiver. As a PT, I conceptually knew what this meant. I knew that I have to be here for her. She has a trach and a peg. I'd have to make sure her trach was taken care of. I'd have to make sure she's getting her feedings. I'd have to make sure she's turned in bed because, we have to keep her skin good. We can't have her having sores on her body. This new role gave me a new perspective on what it meant to be a caregiver. I'd often make suggestions as a physical therapist in the hospital setting, or really any setting, when we're working with patients and they're not making the progress, and we're like, well, they're going to need 24-hour care. They're going to need 24/7 assistance. They're going to need someone there all the time. And if you can't provide that, then we recommend they go to this or that place. And we often make suggestions on how to do that, mostly functionally, because that's our area of expertise, equipment, schedules, that kind of thing. But getting into this role, I had an entirely new appreciation for what that meant. What does it mean to be there 24/7? Excuse me. That means that at 2 a.m, I'm getting up to turn her, to make sure that her skin is intact. If she's gone to the bathroom, I'm not letting her sit in her urine or feces. She's getting cleaned immediately. That means when I want to go out somewhere, I can't just get up and go. Someone has to be here with her. During this time, I had a lot of kind of downtime, even though it's a 24-hour, 24/7 job being a caregiver. I'm not right by her bed the entire day. There's things to do throughout the day, but there are also times, maybe hours, where I have some downtime. So personally, in my life, I value quiet times, prayer, meditation, just really my faith is a big part of my life. And I was able to reflect on when I worked, because I missed going into work, working with my coworkers, working with the different patients, learning. And the question kept coming up, like, what am I gonna do now? Like, I know that I am good at my job. I just got my GCS not too many years ago. I'm wanting to grow as a therapist. I don't want to become stagnant. So what does that look like? Well, I was able to recall when I would have multiple patients and their families that would ask me, do you do therapy outside of here? Do you work somewhere else? Do you have your own business outside of here? Do you come to my house? Do you come to people's houses? And often I would have to say, no, not right now. In the back of my mind, I've always had the dream to, when I was starting PT school, to open up a geriatric country club. I don't know where it came from, but that was something that I really wanted to do. But you have to start somewhere. And I realized that I was given the excellent opportunity, despite how it came about, to be able to start my own business. And it was definitely a leap of faith. But I truly believe this was the direction that God orchestrated. Again, despite the circumstances. But I had new insight, and I had the time to be able to really delve into pursuing this. My husband was super supportive, and just remembering all the patients that I was able to impact, and knowing that I would have loved to work with them when they left the hospital. I would love to have made sure that they had someone to help them along the process of rehabilitation after leaving, because oftentimes we give them information in the hospital, but it's quick. They're trying to get them out. And oftentimes the families or the patients still have so many questions of how do I do this? How do I manage this new condition? How do I mobilize in my home and now I can't put weight on my foot? There were just a lot of questions that people still had. And I saw that there is a void that I could potentially fill by going into private practice. So now, as of today, I'm the owner of Goal Life Therapy, which is a physical therapy company as well as consulting. And because I specialize in geriatrics, that's my primary patient population. That's my focus. Of course, I can treat just about anybody, but my passion, my heart, my expertise is in working with older adults. And so that is where I am now. I have my business. Patients can come to my home. If I'm able to schedule it correctly, I can go to their home. I'm working on a collaboration with Belief in Fatherhood and some of the initiatives they have about people who are doing good. And part of the campaign that I'm helping and participating in is Age with Grace. And there are a lot of new things, prospects that are on the horizon. And I am uber excited to see where this goes. My heart is for the older individual and their families and making sure that they are aging well, aging with the resources they need, aging with the support that they need, and aging with the mindset that because you're getting older, it does not mean that your life has to be over. There is still so much to do. You still have so much potential. You still have work to do. You still have meaning. You still have value. And that's where I am now. And so you've gone with me on the journey from trying to get into PT school, not getting in, trying to get into residency, not getting in, and finally trying to become a GCS that's actually making a difference. And I believe that I'm just in the beginning of my journey of making an impact, not just for the patients that I see as a therapist, but for my community and hopefully for the entire healthcare system and for our society and how we view older adults.